What's up? What's up? What's up? You know the voice. You know who it is. Thank you for tuning in to episode 12 of Just in Time. I have a great episode lined up for you this week. Check out the website, www.justinpiemery.com. Check out the podcast on all platforms. Follow me on social media at Justin Emery Show. And without any further delays, episode, I have Tyrone Johnson joining me, producer of the Mike Missinelli Show that's featured on 97.5 The Fanatic and NBC Sports, as well as the host of Sixers Outsiders on NBC Sports. Tyrone Johnson on the line now. Tyrone, thank you for taking some time to jump on with me.
Thanks for having me.
Definitely. I'm a big fan of yours, and since we were connected and get this episode lined up, I've been really excited to have you on. So,
appreciate it.
Let's dive into it.
All right.
The initial question that everybody, the softball is, what made you get started in the sports media profession?
So as far as, it's what I always wanted to do. What was interesting as to why I got into it when I did was just because I was a listener. There was only one sports talk station in the city at the time. And I remember that a guy who had a pretty high position was doing remote broadcasts. And I knew that wasn't normal. So I figured they have to be hiring because there's no way they have enough staff if this guy's doing a remote broadcast. Now, I had never set up a remote broadcast before, but I was going to figure out how. And that was back when you had to fax your resume, and I think I faxed it in like a lot of times. And I kept, when they call, I figured they would have to call me to tell me to stop. And when they did, I said, the confirmation sheet kept saying it was blocked. And that was why I tried to get it, because I heard that there had to be an opening, and I just went from there.
Now, very rarely do you still hear about the people that started at the ground and worked their way up, progression through. With the updated technology, it's easier for people to get in at different ground levels because of their ability to get to that technology. If you could give one piece of advice to someone who was thinking to get into it, what would that be?
Do as many things live as you can, and as often as you can. And that, obviously, I'm not saying that you have to stream what you do, but you should be able to do a show, especially since most of the shows that people do are, let's say, an hour. You should be able to do an hour without a lot of edits afterwards. You should be able to take that hour, do it in an hour, and then do your intro, do your outro, whatever, and just call it a day. If you can't get to that level, you won't get to the necessary level going forward, because everything I do, whether it's Sixers, Outsiders, Mike Show, whatever, it's all one take. There is no second take. So I think you should get used to doing things in one take. That, to me, would be the number one thing. People that do these heavily post-produced things and then they'll tell what a radio person can do. I mean, it's cute, but unless you can do it in one take, you can't.
Now, I had mentioned that you have two shows on NBC Sports. Do you obviously while you're recording, you don't see it, but do you ever watch yourself on TV on the reruns?
I DVR the shows. I go back and look some. I don't look too much because I like to actually be happy with myself. But yeah, I DVR the shows and go back and look at them here and there. I do want to get better, so I do take the time to do that. But I don't overdo it the way I did early, especially with radio.
Do you have one particular moment that you've covered, whether it be on TV or the radio, that really sticks out to you as like a key moment, or one specific event maybe that stuck out to you?
There's a few. I remember that's actually a really good question, because I haven't just done sports. I've also done political radio. I remember there's a few. One was when gay marriage was legal. I was actually in New York City. I was working in New York City the night that it happened. And I was with, my wife ended up taking a picture with Jason Collins. I remember doing the show the next day, producing a show about that the very next day. That was one thing that was pretty significant in my life. Obviously, all the shows and the remotes and stuff after the Eagles won the Super Bowl. That's a huge one, obviously. And then during the Iverson run, I got to do some games engineering courtside, because that's where the setup used to be. Now at the Wells Fargo Center, they're higher up. It used to be right there, right near the bench. And I remember hearing some of the things that Larry Brown would say to the players during that run. And they were a well-oiled machine, that team in 01. That was they were a well-oiled machine. And I just remember how easy all that was and being around that. So those were the three biggest things, I think, in my career.
Yeah, they definitely were. The 2001 Sixers are one of my favorite teams of all time.
Yeah, they were fantastic.
I'm making the assumption that I already know based upon what I hear you talk about. But what's your favorite sport to cover?
It's basketball. It's always been the NBA, partially because it's the hardest to win, but the easiest to win more than once. And I always figure sooner or later my team's going to be the dynasty. So it's always been that one for me. While if you look at a lot of teams, it's kind of ridiculous how long it took the Eagles to win a Super Bowl when you look at some of the other teams that managed to win a Super Bowl along the way. Before the Patriots, and 49ers here and there, but in between there, the Giants won. Everybody else in the NFC East managed to win. And so I always like the NBA because I feel like it's the hardest to win, but the easiest to win multiple championships. And sooner or later, the Sixers will have a dynasty. I just hope I'm around for it.
I fully 100% agree with everything you said. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, it's coming. It's just because if you just look at it historically, the NBA is just different than the other sports because it's basically each era is defined by multiples. There's the 83 Sixers is the exception. The Mavericks are the exception, but pretty much every other team, the Rockets won two. Usually if you can win one, you can win more than one. The Pistons are an exception. They got back to the finals. But for the most part, if you win one in the NBA, you can win multiple, and I think that's fun.
Yeah, there's more anomalies where they only won one versus teams winning multiple championships. So the numbers are definitely on their side for that.
Yeah, for sure. If they can get the first one, then 2, 3, 4, who knows?
Have you ever been starstruck by someone that you've had an interview with?
Let me think. Starstruck.
Or maybe, I don't mean in the sense that, you're falling apart. And just somebody that you were like, oh, and caught off guard. Someone that, whether it be in your childhood or someone, that you grew up watching or whatever, that you first got to interview them, that you were really like, okay, wow, that's them, the person.
It actually, in the political world, there was a few. The sports world's tough for me because the sports world's partially because in Philadelphia, we don't win enough. And I'm big on championships. So we don't win enough in Philadelphia, unfortunately. Maybe if I was in a city, like if I grew up, imagine if you're a kid right now, let's say you're 20 years old right now in Boston. Think about all the championships you remember. Like if you're 20 years old in Boston. If you're 20 years old right now, you remember 2. And that's like a winning time in the city of Philadelphia. So in Philly sports, not so much, but like I've been on the line with ambassadors and stuff like that. That always kind of tripped me out. Like, wow, this person's like this person really makes decisions on real things. The ambassador to Qatar, different senators and stuff like that. That has been bigger for me because I feel like they won elections just because in Philadelphia, we don't win enough. I hope to be starstruck by this glut of champions, but we just never really have a glut of champions.
That was a really different answer, and I liked it a lot. Mostly, I usually, most people I get, pick their favorite, athlete or movie star growing up. I actually really like that answer. That was different.
It's just how I've always been wired. I've been wired a little bit differently. Like it's great to talk to Ron Jaworski or Brian Westbrook every week. All that is great. But as far as being starstruck, like neither one of those guys won at the highest level. They've been to Super Bowls, but they didn't win them. And now that I'm in the business this long, I'm not going to be starstruck by a Carson Wentz or a Zach Ertz or a Brandon Graham now. But maybe I can get there if Wentz can go on a Brady-like run. Well, then the guy walks on water. We don't really have that many athletes like that around here, and it's a shame.
Who's somebody that is on your bucket list to interview? Now, it doesn't have to be sports. It can be any walk of life. Who's somebody that's on your bucket list?
Well, one would be Andre Agassi is a big one for me. He's my favorite athlete ever. I would love to interview Andre Agassi. I don't know why I would be interviewing him at this point. Maybe his son, because his son's a pretty high level of basketball player out in Nevada. Maybe it'd be something like him making the major leagues or something like that. Any former president, with Bill Clinton, George Bush, Obama, obviously, the most recent former president, that would be a pretty big deal for sure. As far as actors and actresses go, not that many would really move me. Maybe Sidney Poitier, somebody with like a certain level of cachet who's been around, not like a current movie star, a person who maybe broke barriers or something like that. That's what it have to be for me in the acting world.
The next couple questions I have for you are just to get to kind of know Tyrone the person, away from the microphone.
Cool.
So if a book was going to be written about your life, what would it be titled?
It would be called Don't Give Up, or something along those lines. Never quit, believe in yourself, something like that. That's been a big thing, because a lot of people, I guess that's a lot of people's stories, but people like to put me in a box, and they decide that they want to define me, and I'm the only person who can really define me. So to make that happen, you just got to kind of keep pushing. So that would be the title. Well, something like that. One of those would be a working title.
What's a secret skill that you have that many people might not know? For example, not a lot of people know that I can juggle. I'm a pretty good juggler.
How about that?
And always throws people off when I start doing that.
Yeah, I wish I could juggle. The only secret talent I have is I can count by sevens really high and really fast. And I don't know why I can do that, but that's my thing. Like it's a strange talent, but it's the only one that I have.
That comes from a lot of NFL video games, it sounds like.
I don't know. Like 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49, 56, 63, 70, 77, 84, 91, 98, 105, 112, 119, 126, 133, 140, 147, 154, 161, 168. You kind of get it. Yeah, like that.
I'm not going to lie. That was impressive.
But other than that, nothing. That's my only thing.
If you could buy yourself one luxurious item, whatever you want, and I don't mean, donate to a charity or a cause. I want you to be selfish. What are you buying?
Yeah. If I'm doing that, it would be my first car I ever wanted. They don't make it anymore, but I'd have to, not only is it expensive, I would have to pay more because I would have to find one. It would be the Lamborghini Countach. It was the 90s red Lamborghini that was popular at the time. I think then it was like a $500,000 car. Then if I was really going to go for it, that's where I would go. I wouldn't buy the new Lamborghini, even though it's better. I would buy that Lamborghini because that's the Lamborghini that made me like cars.
Hey, you can never go wrong with picking the first car that you loved. So
that was the first, because I'm not like this guy who knows, like I can do basic change a tire, that kind of stuff. But I mean, I'm not like a car guy. But that car, I would be a car guy for.
I like that. I like that answer. If you're cooking a meal to impress someone, just one dish, what are you gonna make?
Cook a meal. I'm making some sort of seafood pasta dish. Most likely, I'm pretty good at that. I would steam everything up, and I could do a nice job. Angel hair pasta, something like that. That would be with the seafood. Obviously, making pasta is not difficult if it's just regular. Cooking the seafood just so makes it a little bit more difficult. That's where I would go with that.
All right, if you can choose any three artists, music artists, you're executive producing a track. Doesn't matter if they're alive, passed away, anybody. Who is Tyrone's three artists on the track?
It's Prince for sure, like no question about it. And then because it's Prince first, I need people who play instruments to go with him. So probably Fiona Apple would be on the track as well. And then Stevie Wonder. Those three would be the three artists, because all of them play instruments. All of them can sing. They can do a lot of things. I could have a lot of fun.
That's a great list, and Prince is definitely a recurring name that pops up with a lot of people.
Yeah, anniversary of his death yesterday. I still think he's underrated. Still, to this day, I think he's underrated.
I mean, you're not going to get a debate out of that from me, so I won't argue with you on that one.
He's the greatest. Now, there's people who will say other artists. They're just all wrong. Like, it's an opinion, but it's kind of not.
It's an opinion based around a fact.
Yeah.
Last question before I get you out of here. If you didn't pursue a career in media, what would you be doing?
I would most likely be homeless. I don't think I could imagine what I could be doing. I guess I think I would be homeless. Literally, I never really wanted to do anything. I am pretty good with computers. So I guess since homeless isn't really an option, that's what would happen. But it's the only thing I ever wanted to do. Like, it's not even close. So I'm really lucky in that way. And with that, other than the computer thing, I don't have a whole lot of skills. So this was it. Like, and it's actually wrong. Like, any young person who's coming up, you were talking about in the beginning, telling young people, there's another thing, if I may, I want to tell them that if they're going to get into this business, they have to have the stomach for the business. And what I say by that, there's things that happen, I'm sure it happens in all jobs, but in media that are particularly cruel and can be particularly unfair. And it may happen to you, and it may happen to somebody around you, somebody close to you that you come up with, whatever it may be. And if you can't sleep at night after dealing with certain adversity, you shouldn't bother getting into the business. And you kind of have to know yourself. So, that was just something I think that everybody should hear, young people trying to get into the business, that certain things won't make sense that happen. And you have to have the stomach for it. Because I know a lot of talented people who sort of gave up because they didn't have the stomach for it. And they basically wasted 5, 7, 10 years of their lives for something they never were really going to fully succeed at, because they didn't have they just couldn't handle how this business really works. But I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
That's great advice right there. That advice right there is worth $1 million. So anybody out there that was thinking about getting into the business, right there, you got your golden advice right there.
Yeah, and I just want to make that clear. That's not to discourage people, because this business, just like any other business, like the NBA, even though it's the NBA, could use more good basketball players. Like, no one would complain like, oh man, there's too many good basketball players, or oh man, there's too many good football players, etc. So there is no such thing as like too many talented people in the business. Like, I want more talented people. I want people who can raise the level of the business. But one thing I notice is there's certain people that get into the business, and at first it might feel a certain way, and when their career doesn't move the way they think it should move, they then move out. And I'm like, that's just kind of not, you can't do that here, because there is no such thing as fair, unfortunately.
I don't even have anything to add after that.
Yeah,
that's a mic drop right there.
No, I appreciate it. I don't mean to go long. It's just one thing I want to
not at all. I appreciate it. That's golden. I could sit here and listen to that all day. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's one thing that it'll happen. But that doesn't mean, again, if you don't quit, like, talent will push through. But just because you've decided that you should be doing afternoon drive and whatever market, blah, 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 doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. And you may be better than the person that you're working under or working next to, and somebody gets an opportunity and those things like that. And you just have to stick with it. That's really the whole thing. Just stick with it if you really love doing it.
Tyrone Johnson, 97.5, The Fanatic, and NBC Sports Philly. Let all the listeners know where they can find you out on social media. Yes,
you can follow me on Twitter. I try to interact with people as much as I can. Ty Johnson News, TYJOH and JOHNSONNEWS. And on Instagram, if you so choose, with Skilligan. That goes back to when I was in middle school, because I was on an island alone with all my skills, because I was that nice in video games. Gilligan, so it was Skilligan.
Do you have any projects coming down the pipeline you want to let anybody know about? I know Sixers outsiders. Once the NBA, when and if they come back, will be up and running. Got anything else coming down the pipeline?
That is right now. A lot of things are on hold due to this pandemic.
Right.
Right now, but I'll still and just being able to produce 4 hours of content right now each day is taking up a lot of the time. But assuming that there is a baseball season, there'll be some more things in the works right now. But since we don't know if or when there will be a baseball season, I can't say too much about it just yet. But just pay attention to the social media or to the radio, and then hopefully when we get on the other side of this, we'll be able to talk about it more.
I appreciate you jumping on with me tonight. And don't be a stranger. I'd love to have you back on again in the future.
Anytime.
Thank you to Tyrone for taking time to join me on the program. That will bring episode 12 to a conclusion. Check out the website, www.justinpiemery.com. Check out the podcast on all platforms. Rate and review, preferably 5 stars. Follow me on social media at Justin Emery Show on all platforms. Episode 13 will be out Monday, May 4th, and it will feature Ryan Wallace, host of the pre- and post-game show on 98.9 Fox Sports Las Vegas, as well as host of the VGK Insider Show. So keep an eye out for that, and you guys will hear from me then.